Hi everyone, welcome to THT, and today we are going to talk about the week 9 of Planetary Qualifier for set 5. This was the first week after the ban of 4th Throw was actually applied, which as you know applied on the 22nd of April. That left a couple of weeks for players to prepare, and this is going to be the first wave of tournament we had with the new meta, because obviously 4th Throw ban has a huge impact on the metagame, and we're going to see how it evolved and how it created new decks or brought back old decks and killed other decks as well. So moving on, first I want to say that this video is sponsored by Card Market, the best marketplace to buy and sell cards in Europe. And we're going to start off with the overall winners. So as you can see, the biggest winners this weekend, Sabine ECL and Han Blue Force, which is kind of a surprise to see Han Blue Force still doing very well despite the ban of 4th Throw. My biggest theory on this is simply because there's fewer Tarkin Town decks, and also there are fewer decks which were targeting Han Blue Force. So I think fewer decks targeting Han Blue Force, which was on everybody's radar in the previous meta, and the fact that fewer decks are running Tarkin Town, those two phenomena combined was very beneficial for Han Blue Force. But there is a variety of different decks outside of those two decks. Sabine Ciel, it's not a surprise. It's a deck that really performs really well in those kind of situations where the meta is not yet well established, because it's a proactive deck that where the build changes very little depending on the meta. So it's a deck that doesn't really take into account the meta whenever you build it. It's a deck that you just really solid face value. And it's obviously one of the strongest decks that hasn't been untouched by ban since the very beginning of the game, so it's not a surprise to see it doing well. Moving on now to the overall top 8. As you can see here, the tendency is a little bit different. We're seeing Han Blue Force taking a bit more of a backseat. Cat Bane Tarkin Down did really well this weekend. Boba Fett Data Vault is still up there, doing really well alongside Sabine. And we're seeing some of the older decks. So remember that some of the best decks in the previous meta mostly involved Kira, Rey. Those decks are back, but they're not tremendously, they're not coming back in a bang. They're not completely shifting the meta. They're coming back timidly back into the top 8. They're also again doing, of course, much better than in the previous meta. Of course, also due to the fact that there's a lot more people bringing the decks. But despite that, still kind of struggling a little. They're not fully where they were back in set 4. We also Gar Saxon ECL doing pretty well. It's a deck that had the quality of doing pretty well against 4th Throw. Without being said, despite doing really well against 4th Throw, it was kind of 50-50 into Quinlan, in my opinion, and so having the Quinlans out of the way is not a bad thing for Gar. Without being said, I don't see how the deck can perform really well in an environment where Sabine is almost everywhere. But it did really well this weekend, and that's nice to see. That the deck is still a thing after the meta, because right now it's pretty much the only deck that uses the Vader ECL combo. Cool stuff. So let's move on now to the winners list. Starting off with the winner of PQ Portland, Rob's Briggs, who basically brought the new version of Han to Blue, so we see how those different versions compare to each other. As you can see, it's pretty close to the old one. The only major difference is he's playing the full package of Entrench, and he's also running one copy of Open Fire, also a couple of Rebellion Hammerheads, so not really... pretty much just playing the old version and just replace some good cards, some old card by some just good cards. It's also kind of weird that he's kind of going on the 50-50 on this. He's not running a lot of black cards, but he's kind of going halfway on the Anakin. In my view, if you're going to be putting out some black cards in your deck, you should probably go all in on the Anakin. But anyway, he didn't go all in either way, which is a bit weird, but anyway. Yeah, pretty solid deck. Only 2 copies of Krayt Dragon in the main, which is also surprising. Krayt Dragon is extremely good in this deck. Yeah, he's an Ogdo Bogdo, making a comeback into the deck as a 3-of. I think Ogdo Bogdo was already a very strong card before, but now that Tarkin Town is going to be less present, it's even more so a great card that you should definitely play in this deck. Moving on, we got the PQ of Saint-Médard Angel, and it was won by Archon, and he played on the Cad Bane Tarkin Town deck, and he played the new version of the Cad Bane Tarkin deck, the one that runs double 2-drop opening, which is the new way to play Cad Bane, and this way is very powerful because your opponent cannot avoid from being pinged by Cad Bane, and it leads to really, really powerful openings when you go double 1-drop, ping the opponent, Tarkin Town, and you put yourself extremely far ahead in the early stage of the game. Because in the old version of Cad Bane that mostly relies on 2-drop, you could very easily just pass and let your opponent play a 2-drop and then go into a pass-pass situation. You can't do this against Cad Bane, and this is the thing, you can't do this against the 1-drop version of Cad Bane, because he will play a 1-drop, and then if you decide to pass, he would just take the initiative, and then he's just one drop away, like he's just ahead. He hasn't used Tarkin Town, he has no unit in play. So it's a very powerful, and it's probably something that people were already doing in the old meta, but now it's basically being confirmed to be the best way to run Cad Bane, and it's very, very powerful. So yeah, the rest of the deck is pretty much what you would expect from Cad Bane, but as you can see, of course, having to run all those 1-drops does have a cost. It makes the deck a lot more aggressive. It's not longer running the Cad Bane unit. The curve is much more aggressive as a result of this. So it's really a deck that more than ever is kind of focusing on the late game. And in this case, of course, having a leader that deploys on 6 is a bigger disadvantage. Next, we got the PQ Aversa in Italy, won by Fame, and he was running Palpatine Administrator, which is confirmed to be the best way to run Palpatine. A deck that, once again, is always going to do really well in a mid-range meta, which will still very much are in a mid-range meta, in my opinion. But it will obviously suffer a lot from Sabine, which is currently sees a lot of play. So there's some advantages. So it's always been a gamble to run Palpatine, and it's no different. It's a deck that I personally strongly dislike because it's so gambling to play Palpatine. Like, with that being said, as far as all the version of Palpatine we've seen across the different sets, the yellow version is by far the one that does the best against aggro. So that's something positive, I guess. And it's a deck that obviously got a lot better with the introduction of Legacy Run. And also Aura Sing, which is also a great early game card, which has made the deck a lot better in early game. Moving on, we got the PQ Pontivy. Really cool to see that there's PQs in small tournaments, even in small towns like this. And this PQ was won by a Han Daredevil deck, which is a deck that's definitely going to be one of these decks that's going to make a comeback. And this is a pretty cool version that runs a lot of interesting cards. He's running 3 copies of Tandem Assault, which I'm sure has taken a lot of people by surprise. Tandem Assault is basically Rebel Assault, but you can unfortunately only attack if you have a space unit and a ground unit. But this deck is capable of doing this relatively reliably. He's basically playing 31 ground. Podamon is not really ground, it's a space unit, so it's a 28 ground, 19 space. So he has a very balanced, so he can make this relatively consistent. Running 3 seems a little bit extreme, but I'm sure he's taken a lot of people by surprise. It's a pretty much a mid-range deck that can really much play the aggressive role. This version is much more aggressive though, running also 4 cards I believe in, so it's a very aggressive version of the deck. Some people playing more mid-rangey, with some blue removal notably in there. This one is definitely a more aggressive version. Really, really cool. No Crate Dragon, for example, is really, really basing on trying to so yeah, it's really, really cool deck. Moving on, we got the PQ Perth, won by Luke Williams, and this was won by a Sabine ECL deck. Very classic version. The Sabine ECL has not really moved much since its initial inception in Shadow of the Galaxy, and yeah, pretty much the pilots are really pretty much the only major difference, honestly, between in the deck since its inception, since it got some major upgrades in Shadow of the Galaxy. PQ Bologna was won by Martin123, which was also playing Sabine ECL. So the Sabine ECL slightly different choice of cards, running one copy of Hala Segura, which not a big fan of, but other than this, the deck is pretty much what you would expect. Moving on, we got Vitoria-Gasteiz running in Spain, who managed to win a PQ with Gar-Saxon Nabat Village. Gar-Saxon yellow, even though... So, I was fairly confident that the green version was the best one in the previous meta. Now in the new meta, I'm not 100% sure. I would pretty much need to do some testing to see which one is the best. So far, as far as the number is concerned, Sabine still seems to have the edge, but never forget that obviously Gar Yellow also got some pretty massive upgrades from the new set, notably Shinhati, which is basically a 5-2 shielded on turn 3, which is just really powerful. But the main criticism I've had with Saxon Yellow has been that even though, yes, it got some really good upgrades, it's still pretty much just only more 3-drops, which the deck has already plenty of. So it basically just got more of the same, didn't get anything that really stands out, that really make the deck so much better, in my opinion. Then we got the PQ Mexico City, and with the only Han 1 who managed to win a PQ this weekend. Han 1, obviously, with the ban of Fortho, has been strongly benefiting from the ban of Fortho. The deck was very difficult to play in the Fortho meta, and it's a deck that is a lot better now. And Han Blue has been one of the decks that has attracted the most attention, included by me. I made a video about this deck a few weeks last week, and the reason for it is because Anakin Skywalker is simply just amazing in this deck. It's, in my opinion, it is the best Anakin deck possible, because you can play it Anakin 1 turn earlier, and you can also enable the -6/-6 very easily without making much debuting constraint. In this case, he's running 4 black cards, which is kind of the standard ratio, and he's running 3 Power Dark Side, 1 Merciless Contest. He's also decided to running the Verpistra, I think she's called, the 3/4 that comes to play ready. Definitely an interesting choice. He's also running Ezra Bridger, so definitely interesting that he's running the 3/4 instead of the 3/5. We might be in a meta where there's no much of a difference between 3/5 and 3/4, but I still believe the 3/5 is just better than the ability that you almost never use. But obviously, Mr. Storm is disagreeing with me. He prefer to run the old Ezra over it. The rest of the deck is very much what you would expect. He's running the Enfys Nest, which is an interesting choice. But yeah, the rest of the deck is very much what you would expect from the Han Blue decks that we've been seeing. It's a really powerful deck. And yeah. Moving on to the PQ Vilsheim, which was won by Tim. Tim, this is his second PQ win in a row. So he's by far the most successful member of Team Enigma I mean, he's also the one who participated in the most tournaments, so obviously that helps. But he's by far the most successful member of Team Enigma. And this time around, he won his previous PQ with Anakin Blue. He also did the final with Anakin Blue on the same weekend last week. This time around, he's bringing a different deck, and he's also successful with it. He was undefeated in Swiss, so he was undefeated in the entire tournament, and he's loved this deck. This is the Yoda Green Force deck, which is not many people would expect that. Most people would expect Yoda to be run with Data Vault, simply because whenever you're running a 7 deploy leader, you want to have more HP. But as you can see, he's making extensive use of the Force, running Chirrut, Itinerant Warrior, as well as the Yoda on the top curve, and also the Yoda's lightsaber. So there's a lot going on here. The interesting choice that Tim made for this list is that he does not play that many Force units early on in the game, because he considered that he doesn't need the Force early on in the game. He needs it basically by turn 3, whenever he drops the Chirrut or the Itinerant Warrior. But even then, those cards are actually pretty decent even without the Force. And for him, the main objective is to get the Force for Yoda. So that's really his main objective. So as a result, this allows him to not play as many Force 2-drop and focus more on 2-drop that can actually trade with the opponent and defend himself in the early stage of the game. So he's got Lost Wolf, Battlefield Marine, and then some more Sentinels on the ground. So he's very well protected. I think his deck has a lot of ground Sentinels and should do pretty well against Sabine. Where I'm a little bit worried of is against Space Aggro. I don't think this deck as much going on against space aggro. He has a couple of Cyborg cards. He has the 3 escort fighters and the full play set of the daughter. But even then, space aggro is going to be difficult to play against. Even he does have the blue leader and the A-wing, but yeah, it's going to be challenging to play against space aggro. I would think, and even aggro in general is going to be challenging. But other than this, the deck is really strong. It has a lot of really cool innovations. First of all, he's running 3 copies of Resupply Carrier, which is really great in the deck. Allows you to ramp into your Yoda and get your Yoda out 1 turn faster, which I think can be extremely valuable because Yoda, in my opinion, is the best 7-drop leader in the game. And he's also one of the strongest leader deployed in the game. Coming out with a 4/9 that kills something and also gives you a restore body is just incredible to have 1 turn earlier. He's bringing a tremendous amount of ramp. He's bringing the 3 resupplies, the 2 copies of Spark of Hope. He also, of course, have the You're My Only Hope. So even though he doesn't play any 5-drop, which is not ideal, but obviously you can play You're My Only Hope to ramp into, to get your 7 drops faster, or even get your Yoda faster, which is completely great. He's also running 2 copies of Clone, so the reason he's playing Clone is to copy his own Yoda. Basically, double Yoda is just completely crazy. So it's a little bit of a high roll card, you're not always going to find it. But when you do, it can be a really, really impactful play. So some people might be very surprised to see him prioritizing clones over Keller and Beck. But the reason it's very simple is because he thinks cloning Yoda is one of the strongest things you can do in this deck. And it is really, really powerful. You can also copy Luke Skywalker. You can sometimes copy his enemy units, of course. So it's a bit of a situational card, but when it works, it must be, it is an incredibly powerful combo. He's also running Vanquishes over Felder Dragon. I think it's mostly because the deck kind of ramps anyway. So you're ramping from 3 to 5, so he's kind of whatever. And there's a lot of people who are running cards that dodge a Felder Dragon nowadays, so maybe that's the reason he's preferring this over it. So a really, really cool deck with a lot of interesting innovations. It's obviously only an early design, so don't necessarily take everything he put in his list as the gospel. He's definitely going to be improving the list over time, but it's definitely been working out really, really well with him. I'm really curious to see how the deck does against more aggressive archetype, though. Moving on, we got a Bosk Data Vault deck. So it's just a really solid deck. Once again, the issue you have with Bosk is the vulnerability against aggro. This deck, as you can see, plays very few 2-drops because the entire idea is to drop, of course, a bounty on the turn 1 play, on the turn 1 play, and then get some sick ramp and to get some more expensive cards. A pretty even split of different late game cards, which honestly in this color combination there's a lot of powerful cards. Eighth Brother's still finding his way into this type of deck, which is very interesting. That's mostly for a curve reason. I think there's just in that color combination there's simply just no better other 6-drops so that's interesting. And really, a cool deck that that might make a comeback. We'll see. Then we got a PQ in Dilsen-Stokkem in Belgium, won again by D.E.Y. Fay. This is, I think, his 4th PQ win this season. An absolutely amazing performance. 4 PQ win back-to-back is just completely crazy. Even if, obviously, playing in a lot of events does increase your chance of winning events. He does participate in a lot of events, but his just win ratio is just completely insane. And he's brought a deck that is similar to the Anakin Blue Force, but this time he decided to bring Han Solo instead, thinking that the fewer amount of Tarkin Town decks is gonna give an edge to Han, and I think he's not wrong about this. And that's his personal version of the deck. As you can see, it's relatively classic. He's still running the Marine, even though she's a lot worse outside of Anakin because she doesn't get the +2 attack bonus, but it's another way to discard black cards to enable Anakin, and the rest of the deck is pretty much what you would expect. Moving on, we got the winner of PQ Middlesbrough, won by Twilgrim. Twilgrim has been notorious in the last few seasons for running a Grand Admiral Thrawn Data Vault, even back in set 4. He's a really big fan of this deck. And so this version here plays the Vader Timely Intervention. It's a very greedy version, I would say. Doesn't have much against aggro at all. Like, I think this deck almost auto lose to aggro, to be fair. Like, he has nothing against aggro. Those Yodas and Lost Wolf are out of aspect, so he can't trade with Battlefield Marine in early stage of the game. He has very few healing, just the Onyx Squadron Brutes, and those, very few healing. No Sentinels outside of Lost Wolf, which comes really, really late in the game. So yeah, this deck pretty much, he has a leader ability that doesn't really help against aggro, a late deploy. This deck, even if you look at this sideboard has nothing against aggro. It's only anti control tool. He has a couple of interdictor just for the aggro, but even against space aggro, he has nothing. So it's like, it's a very, very all-in deck that says, okay, I do not want to play against aggro, and I just want to win against everything else. And as I said, I'm not a big fan of this kind of approach because he makes the game extremely gambling and extremely like kind of, you win or you lose not really by your own skill, but rather by the matchup you get, which I'm not a big fan of that approach to the game, because especially if you're a really good player like Trilgrim, I don't think you need to do that. Like, yeah, well, it worked out for him. I look at his matchup. Obviously, he didn't play against a single aggro deck, so that helps. So that, yeah, his deck is obviously insane against anything else. He has a tremendous amount of late game. He has a huge card engine with Night Sister Warriors and Owen Lars. What's it called? Cop Veins also giving him like a huge card engine as well. I don't know how often he's able to enable the Anakin Skywalker, but yeah, he has that too. He has the timely interventions, Vader combo, which is just insane to stabilize the game, and then he has super laser. Like, yeah, this deck is just completely absurd. Yeah. Moving on to PQ Cape Town in South. I think it's South Africa, if I'm not mistaken. So I think this is the first PQ in Africa ever. So really cool to see a new continent being added to the, like, I think with Africa we have like all 6 continents, not counting Antarctica, of course. We have all continents playing the game now, which is awesome. So yeah, cool to see a new continent being added to the list of places that got an official tournament, and this time it was won by Sabine ECL, that runs pretty much what you would expect. He's running the Gongi General Blades combo, which is cool. But then other than this, is pretty much like a classic version of the deck, I would say. A bit weird that he's running, Red 5 over 7 Masterpiece, but maybe since the meta has a lot of hand too, maybe it's not such a bad choice. Also cool, he has the Planetary Bombardment in sideboards, kind of interesting. Then we got a PQ won by Gar-Saxon ECL. So some people will be asking me whether I think Saxon ECL is going to be better or worse in the new meta. And honestly, it's very hard to predict. Me, on face value, I would say that now seeing what I'm saying, it's definitely going to be worse against Sabine. So on the positive side, there's the Han Blue Force still sees a lot of play, and I think that Han Blue Force ECL loves to play against this deck, especially without 4-Thor now. The matchup is even easier, even though Saxon was a deck that was able to navigate 4-Thor relatively well. Even then, like, 4-Thor is still a strong card, and you're still glad it's gone. It's also a deck that was kind of suffering against Quinlan, with a kind of 50-50, so seeing those deck guns is good. However, having the Sabine decks coming back is really bad for the deck, because the deck still struggle against Sabine. So there's some pro and cons, but overall I feel like the deck is still very playable. So this version of the deck here, pretty classic. I think the only major kind of head scratcher is the 3/3 Sentinels, which I'm not sure. Like, I guess it made the matchup against against Space a little bit better. He's also playing the Whales, so he's playing some. He basically thinks that he needs those cards. From my experience, you don't really need those Sentinels to win against Space aggro, but I felt like feels like he needed, so that's why he decided to play it. So cool to see the deck still performing well. And yeah, moving on to PQ West Bend, we got Alex Craze running another Han Blue Force. This one is once again very classic. Not much to say, we're just gonna move on to the next. Just basically replace Fall Throw by Open Fire, basically. Open Fire and Entrench. So Entrench definitely made a strong comeback into Han Blue Force. Before we continue the video, I just wanted to let you know that you can find Yoda for less than for €6 on card market. So pretty cheap for a legendary that I think is gonna see some play. So cool to see him, the card being set. Now in two decks that I think are worth mentioning, even though they didn't manage to win the event. We have a number 3, so top 4 in Lansing, US, with a Grand Inquisitor Jedi City. This is the same kind of like super eye-rolly kind of aggro deck that's trying to use the Scimitar, which has been a big upgrade for the Grand Inquisitor decks. Also the Grand Inquisitor himself being a good upgrade for the deck as well. All those raid units like the Neo Marauders, and the Aura Sing, all those decks have really helped the deck a lot. So yeah, it's pretty much an aggro deck that basically playing aggro against this deck. So if you get like a bad start against this deck and this deck managed to put you at low HP, the deck really becomes really powerful, because every single unit he plays basically can attack you right away. And navigating around this means that you can basically never tap out and you need to have a removal all the time. Otherwise, you just die. It's like, imagine your opponent's deck is entirely made of Falcons. And Falcons that sometimes deal way more than just 3 damage. So that's a really scary perspective. So it's a deck that, once again, can completely destroy the opponent. But if you manage to stop it early and you don't take much damage, then it kind of like stumbles on the other side. So it's a deck that has really extreme games like this. But it's definitely a deck that got a lot of strong upgrades in the new set, so kind of cool to see. Interesting that he's running Jeddah City over any other base in the game. Jeddah City has been highly regarded as one of the worst 25 HP base of Spark of Rebellion, and also one of the not a competitive 25 HP base. My guess is that it's something to deal with Sentinels. Sentinels can be a blocker for the deck, so you can kind of like give them -4 attack, and then you can just attack them once, use Grand Inquisitor to attack them again, destroy big Sentinels like this. So that's my guess. And yeah, moving on now to Portland, where we got our a Han Green. So Han Green, obviously, is a deck that a lot of people were expecting to make a huge comeback after the ban of Fall Throw. And he didn't do amazingly well this weekend, to be fair. Han Blue Force did better. Once again, is it just a trend of this weekend? It's only a small sample size, so you have to be taken with a grain of salt. But yeah, not that many Han 2 and Green did well, but Sunny D is a player who has been doing really well, who's been loving Han Green since the early days of Spark of Rebellion. We actually entered in contact with each other very early on in Spark of Rebellion, because I was the main Han Green player back in those days. And so yeah, but he never gave up on the deck, as you can see, and he's running the pretty much a version that is reminiscent to what we saw in set 4, with obviously those space units that you can upgrade with upgrades, which I strongly don't like this playstyle, but it's obviously the better way to play the deck right now, as it gives you more avenue to win the game. It's a deck that can win by playing aggressive in space, so it's a deck that can run the value game by ramping into Ewing Reinforcement and now Kelleran back, which is a great upgrade for the deck. Kelleran back, I think, is not the only new card here. There's also one copy of Obi-Wan, so not a lot of new cards, but a few. Then we got in Saint-Médard in Angers, we had a player running a Poe yellow version. We saw a lot of different Poe, but Poe Green has been by far the most popular. I think the first time we've seen a Poe yellow one. As you can see, it's just one of those fully space decks. Just runs loads of space decks. Space card. It's just a space deck, yeah. Not much to say about it. Move on, we have, in the same event, we had AR Deal running a different kind of Han of hand blue, but this one was a security complex one. And it's obviously much more aggressive. It's not running the force. Still running Interior Warrior because it becomes like a 4-2 shielded for 3, which is basically Shinhati. So it's still a really good card even without the force shenanigans. And yeah, it's very aggressive. It runs the rogue guy, so it's based a lot on grit, as you can see, also with the Guerrilla attack pod. And the Phantom 2 is making comeback as a 4-1 in space as well. So it's a deck that is going to be swarming the opponent early on, take over the game. Yeah, so it's a cool deck. It's a cool aggressive deck. So yeah, like it. Then we got in Middlesbrough a player who managed to make top 8 with Asajj Ventress. It's a Asajj Ventress Tarkintown, who playing some very interesting things. So there's the Ogdo Bogdo, because you can damage it with your own card using Asajj, so why not? So you get Death Trooper, which can then work with Ogdo Bogdo as well. You can also kill your own Amiral Modi in order to exhaust ready a unit, which is kind of cool. So a lot of units that benefit from being self-damaged with the Scimitar as well. You got the Banshee as well, which of course was custom made for Asajj. And of course a lot of space units to be able to deploy your Asajj in space. As far as the events, we have one copy of Tip the Scale out of Aspect, which is very unexpected. I wonder in which world you want to play this. Maybe it's like very late to deal with Super Laser Blast or something, I don't know. And then another Aspect, copies of Sneak Attack. Sneak Attack is by far one of the weirdest cards to play out of Aspect, because it gives a cost reduction, but in the meantime it also kind of but if you're playing out of spec, then you don't get the cost reduction at all. But obviously it still allows you to play a card ready, so I guess it can do that. But is it remotely worth it? I don't think so. I mean, I wonder how often you would play this. Calculated Lethality is an interesting card. It's a card that hasn't seen much play, but to be fair, in this kind of deck it kind of works because you're playing a lot of units, so you do benefit from the experience token you get from killing units. So if you're playing a blue-black deck that if you're playing in a meta there where there's a lot of upgrades, then I can see Calculated Lethality being quite good. I would even thinking about why not trying to try this card maybe in a Gar-Saxon deck. Why not? Then we also have 2 copies of the Tale of Plagueis, which prevents one of your units from being killed. I mean, from dying for having HP build on 0, and does have a power deck side effect attached to it. Definitely an interesting card that we don't see often. Power dark side Other Aspect is still a good card, so Dark Plagueis, why not? Could be also a strong card, and also can protect your Asajj pilot leaders from dying and allow him to attack it one more turn, which can be very valuable. So I can definitely see this card being quite good. So a lot of interesting ideas in this deck. Yeah. Moving on now to the second place of PQ Dilsen-Stokkem. So he lost against the Han 2 ECL. No, sorry, Han 2 Blue Force. So second place into a relatively large PQ is a really big performance for this deck. I think this deck definitely gets better with the nerf of Ortho, because nerf Ortho was a cheap removal, and this deck doesn't like playing in cheap removals. I still think that it's not a great meta for Captain Rex. I think Captain Rex loves control meta, and we're still not in a control meta, at least at the moment, so I still think it's difficult to play this deck in this condition. But if you great performance by this deck nevertheless. The deck is very much what you would expect. It's pretty much the old version, just with a couple of improvements for Legend of the Force, with the Porgs, which are great in this deck because they give you extra free units you can drop just before you're running Unity of Purpose to make your Unity of Purpose more powerful. And you also have Opus Rancis, which is kind of a solid card to play. It's difficult to kill. It benefits from Restore. It's great combo with Peacekeeper. It's great combo with... There's a lot of Restore units, so it gets Restore 2 very easily. Lots of Restore cards. So it's going to be a 3-5 Restore 2 relatively consistently, which is just insane. Like a 3/5 Restore 2 is just really, really strong. So yeah, just doesn't hurt to put this card into your deck. And yeah, really cool deck. I mean, it's pretty much what you would expect from if you're going to be running Captain Rex. Also, Village Tender is a great card in his deck because it's a unit that can't be attacked, and it's just going to be another body for Unity purpose to be strong. Then a deck we haven't talked about, even though it's a deck that was extremely powerful in the previous set, and it's obviously Raided Vault. It's a deck that has had a tremendous amount of success in set 4. So it's a deck that we were very much expecting to make a comeback. It's a deck that didn't do well at all against Force decks in the previous meta. So it's a deck that obviously benefits a lot from the ban. With that being said, it hasn't really done so well this week. So I wonder if just people like trying to find the right build for it. So I'm just showing you one of the builds that we saw in Vilsheim in Germany. And this build here is very reminiscent to the old version. It has a couple of new cards. I like the fact that he's playing Oko-based Defender. I think Oko-based Defender is actually a pretty underrated card. It actually will protect you against 2/4s, which we know are Legion in this new meta. And it's also a card that is a rebel, so you can grab it from Mon Mothma. And it's also a card that always has Sentinel, unlike Obi-Wan Kenobi would lose his Sentinels at the beginning of the turn, which can be a big deal sometimes. So really cool idea, cool deck. You're also playing the Mandalorian over Obi-Wan, which is kind of weird, especially since the deck needs to maximize the amount of Force units in order to make Owen Lars more consistent. So I have no idea. I guess giving double shield to is there any unit you really care about? Yeah, I really have no idea why you would want to run the Mandalorian over. That makes no sense to me. You would always want to play Obi-Wan. I guess it's to have a little bit of diversity, but in this case, you're really losing a lot. Like, Obi-Wan is really a better unit in this deck, and also, once again, more hits for Owen Lars is just important as well. Interesting that he's still playing Agri and Parameter in his sideboard, so he's still very much respecting Kylo Tarkington, even though this deck has lost one of the most powerful cards of his deck, which was Fourth Throw. So this deck is definitely not going to see as much play, but he's still respecting it with Parametarian. Then we got another interesting deck from Pontivy. This is obviously the Akbar Data Vault, which is also making sort of a comeback with the ban. From the new set, the card that this deck received is forgot the name of this card. Oh, sorry, forgot the name of this card. Baju Fit, whatever. And this guy basically allows you to attack with a droid and uses its health as attack. So really good combination with R2D2, allow you to swing for 4 basically. So this basically allow you, if you get this guy and this guy together, they attack for 4 in one action, which is just amazing in an aggro deck. And he's also running Grogu, which is another great card, because Grogu is going to be like a very difficult unit to kill, which really, this is the bread and butter of Akbar, is to make sure this unit don't die, so you can just continuously just produce tokens every turn. That's just the way you play the deck. It's really, really nice. Moving on, we got Vitoria-Gasteiz from Spain, running an aggro yellow, white, red decks. It really reminds me a lot about the Sabine deck we saw in the previous set. It was a Sabine yellow deck that was pretty much running the Baju Freak package with all the droids, and then put a bunch of space units after that. And it's the same deck, but it just plays Lando Calrissian instead of Sabine. I probably think Sabine is a better leader, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Lando is better. I don't know. It's a lot more. Those are two very different leaders. Lando is all about this, the card advantage and just the emptying your hand and going all in. Sabine is about those direct damage, which are just really valuable. Sabine just seems better on paper. But cool deck. I love this deck. Then in Vilsheim, there's another cool deck that appeared, that was a Qui-Gon Blue Force deck, which we got to see in action on stream. If you didn't know, by the way, I did stream the top 8 of of the PQ Vilsheim on the Enigma Discord, just for the people who were there. So that was really great fun. We got to follow the adventures of Tim winning the PQ with his Yoda, and watching the tournament, we came across a very interesting Qui-Gon Blue Force deck. So as you can see, it plays very similar cards than the Han Blue Force deck. Plays more 2-drops, obviously, because he can't just jump into 3 drops. But the cool thing is, like, he has loads of interesting synergies with Qui-Gon. Notably, the biggest one was a Sneak Attack. I think Sneak Attack is so great in this deck because you play Sneak Attack, you Sneak Attack like something like an Anakin. You get the double -3/-3, you play this one turn earlier thanks to Sneak Attack, and then you get to use Qui-Gon Jinn to bounce the Anakin back into your hand, and then instead you get to play a Plo Koon or an Ahsoka, and you can just make a tremendous amount of value that way. Or you can also like Sneak Attack into an Ahsoka, make your opponent discard a card, attack with Ahsoka, then get the Force, then bounce the Ahsoka back into your hand, and then play a Yoda. And there's just a lot of really, really cool value engine. I honestly think that if you want to run Qui-Gon Jinn competitively, this is, in my opinion, the best way to go about it. But in my opinion, you're probably better off playing Han 1, because there's still those awkward games where you don't really have the opportunity to use Qui-Gon Jinn, which sometimes can happen. And if you don't, then you just end up with this very underpowered leader deploy. Once again, it's always the problem is that the ability is fine, just the leader deploy is just really, really bad. So, but yeah, the ability was surprisingly good in this deck. And now this is kind of an overview of the metagame now after this first week of Planetary Qualifiers. As you can see, it's pretty balanced. We don't have a single deck over the 10% mark, so it's the most balanced meta we've ever had. But it's only been one weekend, so of course we put some strong quotation marks around this statement. Right now, it's extremely balanced. But we don't know, once again, it's still very, very early on. So we need to see this meta kind of evolve a little bit more to see how things are going to evolve into. And as you can see, the Sabine is currently on top. Cat Bane doing really, really well in terms of top 8 wins, in terms of top 8 performance. We saw also Boba Data Vault also doing well. So these are the stats from Competitive Hub, where the previous stats were from SW Base. Anakin Blue Force still there, and but the biggest one is also Han Blue Force still there. So we'll see. Also Rey making a comeback. We saw Rey making a comeback. We saw Kira making a comeback, even though she hasn't made any splash into this new meta, but she's there. And yeah, it's kind of like a mixture between the old and the new. And right now, as you can see, the meta is very, very mid-range, with Sabine very much on top. A lot of greedy decks that don't respect Sabine in this meta. I feel like when you see the way certain decks are built, they clearly don't respect Sabine enough, in my opinion, which leads to in terms of leader, we see Paul Dameron here actually picking his nose in this in the top 10 most leaders, and also Thrawn has also done really, really well, which is really cool to see. We'll see if this holds up, of course, as we dive deeper into the season. A couple of takeaways from this new meta. The first one is that Han 2 Blue Force is still doing really well despite the 4th throwback, and the main explanation I have is that it enjoys playing against fewer Tarkin Town, and also it enjoys being less targeted. There's definitely a lot of people who are not targeting Han 2 Blue Force as much, which obviously does benefit the deck, because before it was very much an enemy that people were targeting. People were playing a lot of Red 5 in their deck and stuff like this. So we've seen the comeback of Kira, Rey, and Han 1, those 3 leaders that completely pretty much disappeared from the 4th throw metas, that were really prevalent in the Daredevil meta of set 4, definitely made a comeback. We'll see to which extent, even though this comeback is still a little bit timid, especially for Rey and Han 1. Those decks are still pretty much in their infancy in terms of where they used to be. They're not fully recovered yet, but we'll see as the season continues how much they are coming back. But so far, they are coming back, but really timidly, I would say. Non-red force haven't yet confirmed their variability. I don't know, this is really poorly written, I'm sorry. There's an extra yet there for some reason. Anyway, so one of the big theories that some people had was that the ban of fourth throw would basically enable people to play false decks that were not red. And it hasn't really been the case so far. There's the notable exception of the Yoda Blue Force, and there's been a couple of other decks I've seen, so for example some Obi-Wan Blue Force as well, but it hasn't been confirmed yet that non-red false deck have proven their viability. You could argue also the Han 1 Blue Force is also kind of there, but this deck it plays very few force units, so can it really be considered a false deck? I'm not so sure about that. So yeah, haven't confirmed yet their viability, but they're definitely more viable now than they were in fourth throw. I think that's undeniable. Are they truly going to be part of the meta? That remains to be seen. And then finally, as expected, Quinlan, Talzin, and Kylo 5 have mostly disappeared. There's been a couple of Quinlan, there's 2 Quinlans who made top 8. It's still a very strong leader, so I was not expecting it to disappear. Talzin, however, is completely gone. Kylo 5 Tarkintown did make 1 top 8. I think they were Kylo 5. Dead Evolved who also made top 8. So they are mostly disappeared. Doesn't mean they're going to be gone forever. So Kylo Tarkintown and maybe Kylo Tarkintown will benefit from people not running discard things anymore. Maybe Kylo 5 will benefit from this. But yeah, Talzin is going to be tough for the deck to come back. The deck was already not doing so amazingly. In set 5, it was a very difficult deck to play, and it was already not doing great. It was doing fine, but it was pretty much a tier 2 deck already in the previous meta, so the ban of fourth throw is such a huge blow for the deck. I can't imagine it making a comeback. And Quinlan, because the entire deck is based around discard, was one of the decks that was utilizing fourth throw the most. So it's going to be difficult for this deck to come back, even though it was such a powerhouse in the previous meta. I cannot imagine him completely disappearing. They're still going to be there, but just not nearly on the same level. Thank you so much for following this video. If you have additional observation, there were a lot of new decks to cover, so I probably missed a bunch of stuff. Feel free to add additional insights if you were one of the players who run those decks. And I'll see you next time for next week, when we're going to see how this meta goes. I'm expecting to see some major evolution as we move deeper into the PQ season. Thank you so much for following that video, and I'll see you next time.